Welcome back to the second hour of Real Estate Talk. Remember, I say it all the time. You may not hear this on some of the other real estate shows, but real estate changes people's lives to the good. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And your old buddy for the next hour will be talking to you with our friends over at Real Estate Concierge. And our topic, live in the studio with me, is Heather Anderson, the owner of this great company. And Heather, before we came to the studio today or tonight, we were talking about, people that are relocating and why they relocate to Dallas. I listened to a program the other day, and it was pretty darn informative. And they talked about here in Dallas, we have such a great mix of reasons why people move here, jobs. Got a good housing market. You the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I think today that we should talk to specifically folks that are moving from California to Texas, and I'll tell you why. Because I relate to that. When you talk about somebody that's living in California, I've heard this so many times. Hey, we're buying a house. We sold our house in Newport Beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we got X for it. And we're buying 3 times the house in Dallas. And we're only spending half of what we earned.
Right. It's a common story.
Yeah. So what are some of the reasons why people get excited to move to Dallas from the left coast, if you would?
Awesome question, Willie. I get that question all the time. Mm-hmm. And okay, there's actually some few reasons that I think once I say them, you'll be like, I kind of already knew that, So I think that's what makes this an interesting conversation because it's easy to agree with. But okay, the main thing is believe it or not, the central time zone plays a big role.
Really?
Yeah, because first of all, it works really well if you have any kind of a call center type environment, because they can usually hit the East Coast and the West Coast pretty easily within their shifts versus if you kind of had that same infrastructure on the West Coast, well, you're 3 hours behind the East Coast.
Yeah, New York. Yeah.
That's right. And so sometimes it doesn't always work out like that. You're 3 hours before and 3 hours ahead. Well, Central, it's pretty easy to kind of go down the middle. And again, depending on daylight savings time with mountain time and et cetera, we're 1 hour from the east and then about, I believe it's 1 hour currently, actually 2 hours from mountain time and East Coast, the West Coast, excuse me, now. Mm-hmm. So we hit that nice, central space. And additionally, that kind of puts us right in the center of the United States, the south center part. And that makes it easier to travel from, again, the east, the west, the north, the south.
So, location.
Location.
They say this all the time in real estate. Location.
That's right. And that's right. And
I never thought about that,
yeah.
Heather, and it makes good sense for the folks. But, I always think that people are moving to Texas and Dallas in particular because we have lots of land here. California, you can only go inland.
That's so right. It's called landlocked, Willie, and we have never really been landlocked out here except for certain pockets. Highland Park is an example. That's a very landlocked city.
I did not know that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of raw land left. Plano is another one that's becoming more landlocked. South Lake, that's pretty landlocked. Mm-hmm. But most of our cities are kind of wide open, and even when you kind of sprawl to the north, we have so much land. If you were to just take a helicopter or a small plane, you could see all the open spaces, and it's pretty exciting. I read I was doing research for this show last night, and I was reading, about all the mayors and the local infrastructure kind of comments. And one cool thing that Mayor Masso of Frisco said is that our region is basically the people that are going to build it out. They're not even here yet. It's so much development to still be done to reach.
That's right.
Because we'll have I think it's about 2 million people in Collin County and about 2 to 2.5 million in Denton County. So we're going to have about 4.5 million people within those 2 counties, and only about half of them are here right now.
I think the big thing that attracts people to come to Texas, job market, obviously, is there's no state income tax.
Yes, that was one of the other reasons of why companies
Yeah.
want to move here. My business partner, Jay, he works in California, and he pays about 8% state income tax on his income. So he kind of has a joke that says he works half the year for free, basically, by the time he does federal income and state income. But Texas, that's right, we don't have a state income tax, and that is a huge deal. Will it 8%? Like, my gosh, if you made $50,000 a year, that's $4,000 extra per year. That's bigger than most people could ever get as a raise, right? Most people never get like an 8% raise per year. So, but when people move here, they immediately and automatically do.
What's the cost of living in comparison to California?
I really don't know that. All I know is that with the no state income tax, that immediately gives you a raise if you're coming from any state that has one. And another thing that could potentially make it feel like your money stretches further, if you're coming from most parts of California, is a lot of people send their kiddos to private schools, like especially if you're like in the LA area.
Yeah.
And in Texas, you rarely do that. Most schools here are completely great and free and included within your property taxes, which is really the only tax.
Good public schools, huh?
Excellent, award-winning, amazing public schools, and out of like my thousands of clients, a very, very small percentage actually send their children to private school.
If you're thinking about relocating from California to Texas, I got to tell you, friend, one of the best real estate agents you could ever find to be on your team for you and your family is my friend Heather Anderson. I want you to reach out to her directly at 855-732-6700. Again, 855-732-6700. If you're just joining the program, we're going to take this hour and talk about relocating and why it's a good thing to come to Texas and why buying real estate is a good thing. Live in the studio, Heather Anderson, Real Estate Concierge. Now, dear.
Yes.
Carry on.
Okay. Another cool reason is the DFW International Airport. So they have like direct flights to China, direct flights to Japan, direct flights to most of the major cities within the world, which again helps for the communication, the meetings, and it just is, it's cheaper, it's easier, and it's quicker. And so that is actually a big play and a big role here for larger corporations that relocate to the area.
I got you.
Specifically, I know we're talking about California, but I came across an interesting statistic also last night. Currently, we have about like 150 to 160 Japanese companies here in our north region. I did
not know that.
Yeah, and those reasons that I just mentioned, like the ability to get to and from Tokyo on a direct flight, that plays a huge role. Again, with the central time zone, low cost of living, and then the climate is just really perfect. And that's been an interesting trend we've seen, or that I guess this article that I was reading has talked about, over the last half decade and decade, as we grow our Asia relations, and it's pretty exciting and fun to watch.
Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that somebody that is relocating? I mean, I was driving the other day in the neighborhood and there was a for sale sign. I talked to the lady. She happened to be on the porch. And I said, how did you find the real estate agent to sell your house? She goes, man, Mr. Lambright, I had to go through 7 real estate agents to find the right one. She's local, and that was a challenge for her, and I learned some things talking to her. But somebody that is out of state, usually it's a friend of a friend, or I know a real estate agent, come to Texas. How does somebody really, find that right real estate agent? It's got to be a process.
Yeah, and that's a great question. We see a hole there too, like, when you're moving from out of state, you just don't know anything about the area. So we really want to come up with a way to make it simple and easy. So kind of one of the categories the whole point of this show is we kind of came up with 4 ways to help clients reduce stress when relocating to Dallas, California. Stressful. Very stressful, yeah.
So we could put a footer on this, relocating from California to Dallas or Tokyo to Dallas.
Right.
I got to go to break. Live in the studio is Real Estate Concierge, my friend Heather Anderson. If you're relocating from California to the great state of Dallas or Tokyo to the great state of Dallas, I want you to reach out to her directly on her bat line, 855-732-6700. Again, 855-732-6700. When we come back, we're going to tell you how to deal with some of those four major stress points when relocating compliments of real estate concierge. Guess what? We'll be back in a Willie Scotia.